Hi, I'm Courtney at womenlivingwell.org, home of Good Morning Girls, and welcome back to week 2 of our series, Making Your Home a Haven, titled Don't Let Go. Now this week I was driving down the road and a red Lamborghini pulled up right beside me. There was this man with his son and his license plate said, hustle. And then the light turned green and he went flying through the light, and there I was stuck in a lane that was going like at a snail's pace. And so as we went along, I could see that people were getting out of my lane and going around something, but I couldn't tell what it was until I got to the front, and there was this man in a power, like motorized wheelchair, and he was just going along, trying to get to wherever he needed to go. And so I thought, wow, what a contrast. This man in his bright red Lamborghini seemed to be on top of the world. And then over here, we had this man in his wheelchair just struggling to get where he needed to go. And you know, that can be a lot like us. I don't know where you're at today, if you're feeling like you're on top of the world or if you're struggling to just get through the day. But I want you to know that I've been there, where I have just been struggling to get through the day, and God is faithful. You know, in Hebrews 13:5, he says he will never leave us and he will never forsake us. And so today I want to share some of my story, a little life update. I've already shared out on the blog that I am newly engaged, but I've never really talked about it in video. So I wanted to just share a little further about what God is doing in my life in hopes that it would encourage you. So as I said in my last video, after 19 years of marriage, my husband left me for another woman, and it was devastating. And so for the last 7 years, I have been a single mom. But when he left, I have to admit, it was so hard because it felt like he was experiencing a freedom that I did not have. He was traveling and he was going and he was doing things, and I was stuck back still homeschooling and parenting and doing laundry and cooking and cleaning. And it seemed like he was on top of the world and I was over here not only struggling just to do my normal things, but also all the things that he normally did now was on me. And now I was doing that too, and I was so discouraged. I had been praying that God would restore our marriage and that we would be reconciled, and at times it looked like that might happen, but it always fell through. And so I was so discouraged. But then time passed, and around the 3-year mark of me being a single mom, I kind of like found my groove, and we had, found a new normal, and like we were making it. Like I was getting my kids to everything, to their sports and their practices, and helping them with their homework, and we were going on vacation, just the 3 of us, and enjoying our time and getting more used to it. And so as we moved along, I started to find contentment in my singleness, but at the same time, it was a struggle. There would be women who would reach out to me for counsel who were going through the same thing that I had gone through. And so I would text with them, and I would talk on the phone with them, and I would give them counsel, and I would pray for them. And then God would he would do it. He would answer our prayers, and these marriages came back together and were restored. And I would rejoice with them that it was happening. And yet I also had to pause and say, but God, what about me? Why aren't you doing this for me? I mean, I didn't not want it for them. I just wanted it for me too. And so that was hard. Another thing that I felt like I struggled with during that time was, of course, Facebook. And it wasn't always like this, but just sometimes I would see an anniversary post go through the feed, and I would feel that tinge of pain in my heart where I was just like, I'm never going to have that. I'm never going to have that 20-year anniversary or that 25-year anniversary. And so that hurt. I also just had this experience where I felt like I had seen other women go through divorces, and God brought them a wonderful man really fast. And so it felt like they were barely single and they were remarried. And I was like, well, where's my, prince in knight in shining armor? I was like, it's year number 3, year number 4, year number 5. And truly, I wasn't looking for a knight in shining armor. I had decided that I wanted to raise my children all the way, and then I would be open to whatever God had next. But I did tell my friends, I was like, well, if God drops a godly man into my lap, I won't chase him away. And so God did just that. It was just on a warm summer night, or warm summer day, I should say. It was morning, I think. My phone rang, and it was this man from my church with a deep voice, and he began to talk, and we connected for a second, and he asked me on a date, and I was like, oh my goodness. And so I was getting ready to leave on a vacation to Florida, and so I told him, that we couldn't do it till the next weekend. He's like, just give me a call when you get back in town. I said, okay, because I was so nervous. And then while I was gone on vacation, he talked to my brother-in-law. And he was like, I told her to give me a call when she gets back. And my brother-in-law said, she is not going to call you. She has been raised in a home where she does not call boys. And so he was kind of right. I probably wouldn't have called him. But the minute that my plane, landed and I was back in town, he called me and he asked me out again. And we went out on that first date, and that has changed my life dramatically. Now, I want to pause because I hesitate to tell you how God is redeeming my life and how he's bringing beauty from ashes, because I know that there might be a woman out there, and I don't mean to get, who might be where I was just at, where when things were turning out for other people, it sometimes discouraged me. And I don't want to be causing that tinge of pain in your heart if you are discouraged today. And so I just pray that this will be an encouragement to you, because I know what it feels like to feel like you're stuck in the waiting room of life and like everyone else's name is getting called and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And so I don't want this to be a discouragement. But what I do want to say before I share all of this is that just because God has brought this amazing man into my life, that does not mean that my whole life now is just like tied up neatly in a bow. Life is complex and it is messy and it is hard. And blending two families together is not easy. We have 4 children and all of them have gone through loss. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that blended families are born out of loss. And I've lost a spouse, and his previous wife is in heaven now. And so it is hard. And there's a lot of things that I think first families don't have to deal with that we are learning and we're doing together. So this is not easy, but it is good. Our children are amazing and they are strong. And my fiance is such a blessing. So back to the phone call. Well, actually, let me back up even further and just explain to you a little bit about how our church is. And I'm just going to ramble for a second. Bear with me. Okay, so at our church back then, we had 3 services, 2 in the sanctuary and 1 in our gymnasium. So I worshiped for 20 years in our sanctuary with my husband until he left me. And after he left, that gaping hole beside me every Sunday just hurt too bad. And so I decided to change, and I went to the gymnasium where my sister and her husband and her children were worshiping along with one of my closest friends and her kids. And so we all sat in this big long row. And in the row in front of my sister and her family, there was this other beautiful family, this handsome man, beautiful wife, beautiful girls, and their son-in-law. And so every Sunday, this family was there, but I never spoke with them. I didn't really get to know them. I kind of was just in my own world. But fast forward 6 years, and my sister sends me a message. And she asked me, I'm sorry, I just feel for the family. So she asked me to pray. She asked me to pray for the woman that sits in front of her at church. And honestly, she gave me her name. And at the time, I didn't know her name. I didn't know who she was. And she said, pray for her because she's in the hospital dying. And so I prayed. But then 12 days later, my sister sent me a second text that said that she had died. And on that day, when I looked at the calendar, it was just 3 days until Christmas. And that is the exact date that my husband left me. My husband left me 3 days before Christmas. And now this man was losing his wife 3 days before Christmas. And so my heart broke for him and broke for this family. And I kind of had almost an immediate connection with this family because of the loss being on the same day. And so now I was very aware of his family. And so every Sunday I would look down the row at this man as he stood and he was worshiping and he was singing and he was opening his Bible and he was still wearing his wedding ring, and I could see his faithfulness and love for her, and he was still smiling and he was so strong. I admired his faith from afar. And so we had never spoken. He was just there in that row. I was not about to pursue him or anything like that. And then eventually time passed and him and his girls moved to worshiping in the sanctuary. And I was still in the gym. So it was sort of like an out of sight, out of mind thing until I got a message that my brother-in-law, he had asked my brother-in-law for my phone number and that he was about to call me and ask me out on a date. And so I was like, oh my goodness, am I even ready for this? So he calls, we go out, and it was really cute because he was just so honest. Like I got in the car and right away he was just like, he's like, isn't this weird? Aren't we a little old for this to be going out on dates? And he's like, I haven't done this in 33 years. So him and his wife had been high school sweethearts, just like me and my husband, and neither of us had dated anyone since the loss of our spouse. So that was precious as well. And so I wasn't sure if I had time to date. I mean, I still have 2 kids at the time that I need to raise the rest of the way. And so I made that clear to him. I was like, I kind of need to like casually date because I got 2 kids to raise. And he was like, no, I'm dating seriously. And I'm like, well, then feel free to kind of, you know, date around. And he was like, no, I'm waiting for you. And so he kept calling, he kept texting, he got to know my friends and my family. Everyone loves him. He's super outgoing, actually probably one of the most outgoing people I know. And just, he remembers everyone's names and all their details way better than I can. And so I was falling in love with him. And so about a month into our dating, we sat on a dock at a lake that's near my house that I used to go to all the time. I've been there 100 times probably, alone to just worship and pray. And so I took him with me. And that night, as we sat, it was dark and the moon and the stars, and we just weren't even looking at each other. We were just looking out over the water, and we were just talking about the deeper things of life. And I asked him, I said, you know, losing your wife, did that ever like shake your faith? And he said, no, I never doubted. I trust God. I know that she's in heaven, and I trust him with my life. And I was like, me too. And so it was at that moment that I really felt a genuine connection with him in a deeper way, because I don't really have that. I don't share that, I guess, with like my family. They haven't gone through this, or my friends. And so we have a unique connection that I just didn't have with anyone else. And I was like, uh-oh, God, I think that you are in this, that you have brought him into my life, and I've met my match. And so God was connecting our hearts together, and now it's getting really long. Okay, 6 months later, we get engaged, and that has meant that we have a long engagement because this past summer, he went along with us, and we took my son, Alex, to Liberty University and dropped him off for his freshman year, and now my daughter's a senior, and so this summer, we will get married. So that is my life update. Not only am I engaged, but we're also building a house, which is super exciting. We broke ground in June. And when it's done, after the first of the year, he'll move in with his daughter. And then after we're married in July, I'll move in along with my children. And again, I know it sounds amazing that we're building a house, but I just have to say that this is actually really hard as well, because both of us raised our children in the homes that we're in. And so as we sell our houses and we move forward, alongside this joy, there is a grief, right? There's a letting go of the past and a loss there. And I'm getting a little teary, not for my own self, because I'm super excited and happy, but for the children. I recognize what they've been through and how hard this is. Sorry, I didn't expect that. And so, I don't know what you're facing today and what hard things, and oftentimes it is like that in life, isn't it? Where it's like we have these joys, but alongside there's also these heartaches and these pain. And maybe for you, I don't know, maybe you're feeling like life isn't ending up like you thought it would. And I know for him, my fiance, he has said that many times. He's like, I never thought this is, a place that I would be in. And, I want you to know that if I was sitting here single today leading this Bible study, that I would say the same things I'm saying today. And that is that God is faithful. And I was saying that 15 years ago when I started blogging, I talked about God and how faithful he was. And when I was a homeschool mom and I felt loved, I said, God is faithful. And when I was betrayed and rejected and unloved, I still said, God is faithful. And then now I'm loved again, and I have a hope for a new future and a brighter day. And I still say, God is faithful. He is with us in the valleys. He is with us on the mountaintops. He is with us. Do not let go of him. Now, I have to share one more just funny detail, just because I don't know when else I would share this, but there's some irony here. My first husband's name is Keith, and my fiance's name is Keith. So that's just, I guess, God's sense of humor. Right? But anyways, one of my life verses is Galatians 6:9, and it says, do not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap a harvest if The key word is if we do not give up. Do not give up in the hard days. There is this principle of reaping and sowing in scriptures, and reaping takes patience. An oak tree is not fully grown in a day. And so our thoughts and our actions and our words and our hobbies and our habits are all seeds. If we plant pumpkin seeds, we get pumpkins, right? We can't get a beautiful rose from a pumpkin seed. And so we need to be careful. What are the seeds that we are sowing in our lives? And so I believe that the seeds of meditating on God's word and praying and giving thanks every day is part of how God works through those disciplines to strengthen us for the mountaintops, for the valleys, and for all the changes of seasons in our lives. He is there and he loves you so much. Do not grow weary in doing good. Do not give up. Keep walking with the King.